Hello, Derryl Gabel here. Thanks for joining me. In this video, I'm going to share with you a systematic approach for memorizing the notes on the fretboard. We're also going to take a look at the construction of the chromatic scale and the major scale and how it's laid out on the guitar. This is going to play an integral role in helping you know the notes on the guitar. Whenever I first started playing, I really had no regard for knowing the notes on the guitar. I just wanted to learn my favorite songs and guitar solos, and that's all fine and good, but as I became more serious about my instrument and I started getting into improvisation and jazz and playing over changes and everything, I began to really understand the value of knowing the notes on the fretboard and realizing that I'm really going to have to learn this instrument. I'm really going to have to learn where these notes are and know them immediately. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you already understand the importance of knowing where the notes are, and you want to learn more about it. And but for those of you that are kind of skeptical if this is going to help you or not, just one little prime example would be, like let's say that you learn this chord from online or from a friend, the C major 7th chord. Okay, well, if you know all the notes in this chord and you know where all those notes are on the guitar, right, then you can start grabbing different groups of these notes, and creating other chord voicings. Okay, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. So anyway, let's get started and let's have a look at the chromatic scale. Okay, here we have the chromatic scale. This is every note in music that we use. Okay, the chromatic scale is constructed in an interval called half steps. So from A to A sharp or B flat, that's a half step. From A sharp to B, that's a half step. From B to C, that's a half step, and so on. A half step on the guitar looks like this. So from A to B flat or A to A sharp, that's a half step. B flat to B or A sharp to B, that's a half step. So a half step is from one fret space to the next. Alright, so let's go back here to the chromatic scale. Okay, so as you can see, every note, or just about every note, has a corresponding sharp. So you got A sharp, C sharp, D sharp, and so on. The only notes that do not have a corresponding sharp is B and E. Okay? So just remember, from B to C and E to F is a half step. Alright? All the other notes are going to have a corresponding sharp, okay, and a half step movement, and then another half step until you get to the next note, right? All right, and two halves make a whole. Okay, and also you can see that just about every note has a corresponding flat. You got B and B flat, D and D flat, and so on. There are two notes that do not have a corresponding flat, and that is C and F. Alright. So now let's take a look at this intervals chart down here, okay? So a half step is also a minor second. Okay, and then a whole step is a major second. A whole plus a half, that's a minor third. That's what this is right here. Whole plus a half is a minor third. 2 wholes is a major third interval. Okay, now this is a interval that we're going to be talking about quite a bit in this video, and that's the perfect fourth interval. One reason is because the guitar is actually tuned in perfect fourths for the most part. From the G to the B string is actually a major third. Look, if we're here on the G string, for instance, let's say this was the G string on the guitar, and when we go from the G to the B, that's 2 whole steps. From G to A is a whole step, and from A to B is a whole step. And so as you can see here, when you have 2 whole steps, that's a major third. But all the other strings are tuned in perfect fourths. As an example, like from E to A, that's 2 wholes plus a half. All right, look, from E to F sharp, that's a whole. And from F sharp to G sharp is a whole. That's my second whole. And then G sharp to A is a half. All right, from A to D is 2 wholes and a half, a perfect fourth. From D to G, again, a perfect fourth. All right, and remember, from B to from G to B is the major third interval. And lastly, from B to the high E string is going to be a perfect fourth. The reason why the guitar is tuned the way it is for bar chords, basically, because the guitar started out as a rhythm accompaniment instrument, just for rhythm guitar playing, and later people started playing guitar solos on it. So, alright, but what I would do is I'd recommend that you study this intervals chart and memorize it, okay, and look for a good app, ear training app, that will play the intervals, and then you'd have to guess what they are, and it would tell you if you're right or wrong, and this way you can train your ear to identify these intervals. Okay, that's going to help you out. Alright, now let's look at the construction of the major scale. Okay, so the major scale is constructed using 2 wholes, a half, 3 wholes, and a half. Let me see if I can make this a little larger for you. There we go. So that means that whatever note we start on in the chromatic scale, if we use this formula, we will create the major scale based in that key. So for example, like if, let's say we were to start on the A note here, okay, and we use this formula. So we use A, and then we go a whole step. To B, then we go another whole step. To C sharp, now we go a half step. To D, then we go a whole step to E, then a whole step to F sharp, then a whole step to G sharp, and a half step back to A. That is the A major scale. Alright, so down here I have the C major scale mapped out. And in between you can see the formula in between the notes. I put that there so you can see how that matches this right up here. Alright, and the reason why I'm showing you the C major scale is, one, the C major scale is special in that it's the only major scale that has no sharps and flats. And we're going to be using this major scale, this C major scale here, to help us with learning the notes on the guitar, because what we're going to do is we're going to map out the C major scale on every string. Okay, and then once we identify where all those notes are, then we'll start to add in the flats or the sharps, which leads me to my next point. Again, that the A sharp and B flat, that's the same note. Okay, what I mean is it's the same pitch or tone with two different names. You know, if you were to look at a piano keyboard, all the white keys, all right, are the natural notes. Okay, all the black keys are the sharps and flats. So this would be like one key on the piano keyboard. Okay, this right here, and this would be like another black key right here, C sharp and D flat. So it's one pitch or tone that has two names, and it depends on the context whether you would call it, for instance, a C sharp or D flat. All right. So let's have a look at the chromatic scale again as it's laid out on the guitar now. Okay, here we have the chromatic scale laid out on the low E and the high E. And I've done this as it appears using the flats and the sharps. That way you can see the contrast between the two. So, you know, you see E, F, and then here you have G flat, but you also have F sharp. Okay, and then as we go along, we've got A flat here, but it's also G sharp. You know, these two notes, the flat and the sharp notes, are inharmonic. So you would say that A flat is inharmonic with G sharp because it's the same tone or pitch note, you know, with two different names. Okay, so if we go and look at each string, okay, here's the A string, all right, and the D string, you can see that this is laid out just like the chromatic scale that we looked at earlier. It's the same thing. All right, just starting on a different note. Here we're starting on the G note, all right, but it's all the same notes. Here's the B string. So as we are mapping out each string, you know, going along through the DVD, I would recommend that you would look at this document so it help you follow along easier, okay? Because you know, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to map out the key of C on each string. Okay, here we have the key of C on the low E and the high E as it appears, okay? Now, you know, this is the key of C, but just starting on the E note. It's still the key of C. It's still the same notes, all right? Okay, and so once we map out the key of C on a particular string, and we come up with the mnemonics for each of the note locations, and we get that down, then we're going to move on to finding where the flats are, which is going to be easy because the flats are just behind the natural notes. As an example, here we have G right behind it in this location. That's G flat. You know, here we have A, right behind it is A flat. So once you have the key of C, it's going to be real easy to find the flats, okay? And remember, every flat note has an inharmonic equivalent that's a sharp note, all right? So, you know, we're going to do this for each string. Here's the A string. All right, here's how the key of C is mapped out on the A string. All right, and so on. So again, you know, you're going to want to use these documents as we go along in the video, mapping out each string. All right, so let's grab our guitars and get started.